our new series of virtual breakfasts. We have breakfasts every Tuesday morning now from 9 o'clock. The next breakfast next week, which is the 21st of April, I'll be joined by Milan Dalal, and we'll be talking about how the pandemic is impacting various industry sectors. And we'll also be joined by a couple of buyers of professional services as well to give their take on how demand has been changing, both in the short term and longer term, thinking about the impact of their relationship with advisors. So if you haven't signed up for that, that's the 21st of April, next Tuesday morning at 9 o'clock. But thank you everyone for coming along to the first of our virtual breakfasts. I'm really excited today to be joined by a great panel who I will introduce very shortly. Ben is going to kick us off with a short video. He's been looking at what the possible impact of the virus has been on the professional services sector for the short term, and been speaking to a few experts to get their view on how things may change over the long term as well.
The thing about kind of, you know, our society, right? You know, everybody needs law, and everyone needs to count up the numbers at the end of the year. So I think generally it's not recession proof, but it's a damn good industry, right? I think it's been pretty clear, digital, right? So if you're not actually focusing on putting data at the heart of your business and your business model, and you're not, accelerating the move to digital law, then you're exposing the long-term sustainability of your business to great risk.
Well, in the short term, the clients I work with are busy protecting their balance sheets, figuring out how to save as many jobs as they possibly can, and also looking to protect and support their clients. I think some of them are starting to now get their heads around what the future might look like for them and how they might adapt.
Thanks, Ben. So I think a mixed picture of some views there. And for those of you who didn't catch the whole of Mike's audio, he was talking about opportunities around kind of automation and real kind of seeing this as a catalyst for driving investment in technology. But from the various conversations you've had, Ben, what are the messages you've been hearing at the moment?
Look, I think there's a huge amount of uncertainty out there, but my feeling is that professional services will ride out this particular crisis better than many other industry sectors. You know, I've got contacts in retail and wholesale business, and it's fairly catastrophic for them. And I think the reason for that is professional firms have this ability to adapt. There's lots of opportunities around kind of crisis type work, much as there was in the 2008 recession. I think also many firms had a pretty good run of financial results, and so their cash balances should be in place. So I think it's going to be very much a mixed bag, but I think many, and particularly the Magic Circle and the very large firms, will see plenty of opportunity. I think what it will do is accelerate kind of existing changes. So I think we'll see more pressure in the kind of mid-market and the smaller businesses, particularly those that have a very consensual style of leadership and can't make the quick changes. I think also we've seen the acceleration of the move towards the digitalisation and the move towards more work being done in-house. So I think over the longer term, I think like many crises, it will be an accelerator of change.
Great. Stay with us, Ben. I want to bring in three of our experts now. We have Paul Smith, some of you may know, the former chairman of law firm Eversheds. We've got Nigel Clark, who's Global Head of Marketing Communications for environmental consultancy SLR, and Keith Tracey, who heads up the professional services practice at insurer Aon, to kind of shine some light on what's happening in their respective markets. So maybe, Paul, if I could start with you. I know you were at the helm back in 2008-9 at Eversheds, where the last kind of big recession. What's your sense of how things are different this time round, and what the lessons you learned from that experience were that you could take and apply to where we are in 2020?
Yeah, thanks, Alastair. These are scarier times than 2008, I think, and I think if I was at the helm, and thankfully I'm not, preserving cash would be a major priority for me. So I think there are two streams of activity. One is keeping the money coming in, and two, looking at how this will really fundamentally change the way that we do business. There's a scary statistic that of the top 100 law firms in the UK, 10% have less than £1 million in cash reserves. And of those, you worry that many firms, especially in the mid-market, are reliant on overdrafts that can be withdrawn at a moment's notice. So I think for many firms, it's keeping the cash coming in, it's survival. But I agree with Ben, this will create enormous opportunities to really accelerate what was happening before in terms of a greater digital connection with clients, greater innovation, greater investment, and more focused investment in technology.
Fantastic. And what's your thought, Paul, on kind of where the focus around that could be? Because, you know, historically, the last couple of years, there's been a huge amount of chat about, you know, professions are innovating, but it sounds from what you're saying that this, you know, the time really may be now for that to change.
Yeah, I mean, people have always said we need to innovate and we need to invest in technology, but they were never really sure what kind of technology will be the best to invest in. And for me, it's going way beyond just tools that make what you do already more efficient. It's actually having a greater digital experience with your clients. And really, this is the opportunity for law firms really to start treating their clients as customers, and to create an Amazon type experience where they use the data, they know what their clients want, and they engage with the clients in a far better and more efficient way than they did before, through apps and through creating a better customer experience. Historically, clients have dealt with individual partners, individual teams. This is really an opportunity to bring it all together for clients to understand what a firm stands for, what its brand is, and have a true digital experience.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic. And picking up on the idea of client experience, Nigel, I know a lot of the work at SLR is done, you know, on the ground. It's about the built environment. Clearly, that's a lot more tricky at the moment. So how are you responding to that challenge?
Yeah, I think Paul makes some very good points there, which is it's a tremendous opportunity to kind of really think about what the customer wants and what that experience can be, rather than just shifting what you do at the moment to making it more of a digital, you know, reinventing what you do at the moment in a digital environment. I think there's a tremendous opportunity here to go back to basics and sort of think about how you can do things. We do a lot of things out on site with clients in the field, in industrial sites, built environment, infrastructure, as you say, Alastair. And I think there's a great opportunity here for us to sort of think about how we do that, how we use digital technologies, whether that's remote scanning, whether that's use of drones, how we use data and process that data, and not necessarily minimize the human interaction, but actually think about what best suits the customer and how you can do that through human digital experience, and not just the same old really.
Is now joining.
And with us only being kind of 3-4 weeks into a new way of working, what have you found that's kind of resonated most with clients so far?
Well, I think what's resonated most is that actually, as you know, we're nowhere near as far down the digital track as Paul sort of says, but actually, as an advisory business, we're incredibly flexible organisations. We're pretty well set up to work in remote teams. We do it already, and therefore I think actually our ability to adapt and our ability to redesign our service, we can be ahead of our clients on that, because I think a lot of them are struggling. So if we think it's hard, I think they're finding it harder. So I think we are definitely in a position. We've had a number of clients come to us and say, can you do this for us? Because we can't, you know, and we're sort of thinking, oh, well, actually, there really is an opportunity here, because we can respond and we can react quicker than they can.
So it's kind of that age-old mantra, in a sense, being that one step ahead of your clients, you know, understanding what they need so you can best respond.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know, if we think we're in a tough position, if advisory businesses, consultancy businesses, if law firms think they're in a tough position, I think you'll find that the clients think they're in an even tougher position. So, you know, we can respond and react faster than they can, I think.
Mm-hmm. And Keith, to bring you in here as well, I'd be interested in your view of what you're seeing. I know you're very well plugged into the sector. You know, what's your sense of how firms have been able to respond over this first month, and then how things may change more significantly going forward?
Yeah, thanks, Alastair, and thanks for the invite, and good morning to everybody. My role today is dealing with clients in the larger sector in professional service firms. And I find that, surprisingly, that they are very, very well positioned to deal with the current crisis, having advanced systems in terms of working from home, being agile generally, and of course in the field of IT, and in particular IT security. So what we're seeing, I think, perhaps lower down in terms of size, are challenges around IT security. And I'll translate that through the sort of risk management questions that we are getting from insurers, which are being posed to clients. And of course, as the renewal season approaches, this will become quite focused. And insurers are very, very inquiring on the basics of the IT framework, the architecture, use of cloud, etc. But of course, mostly on data network security and endpoint security in particular. And of course, this crisis came relatively quickly in terms of timescale versus its severity. So organizations perhaps didn't have the time to prepare. Well, they clearly didn't. Some of our larger clients were able to answer these questions very easily. On top of the existing high levels of security, they actually added extra endpoint security very, very quickly. So I think the whole cyber risk, so-called, has been a big area of focus. And it's really what we heard earlier about investment in innovation. Those firms best equipped to invest and to innovate are the ones which are best positioned in that field. And I would add, having tapped into the excellent series of webinars, not as good as yours, of course, from the London Business School, where they are looking at what the lessons are. And there was a very powerful point made by one of the professors that those organizations in 2008 that looked to the future, that had a plan for the medium and the long term, emerged much better than those that didn't. Those that invested in innovation did better than those that cut costs. And I thought that was a very powerful lesson. Perhaps there's some pointers there.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic. And maybe just to bring you back in, Ben, and your video, you referenced some of the research that you've been doing around kind of investment in innovation. So to pick up on what Keith and Paul have been saying, you know, how do firms use this as a catalyst to kind of refocus?
Yeah, so for us, for Avanti, we did a benchmarking survey of professional services firms to look, you know, beyond the hype around actual investment in innovation, what technologies are they using. And what that showed is that the use of advanced technology was fairly limited, and particularly in the smaller firms. It was the larger firms that really got ahead of the curve. And there were these big challenges around the ability of professional firms to innovate quickly. So, lack of time of fee earners, a risk aversion, a worry about investing in technology. But I think a lot of it actually is not so much the money, it's the mindset. Because the cost of a lot of these technologies has come down. And I think that it could be an opportunity for agile mid-market firms to really capitalize on this.
Thanks, Ben. And Paul, what's your sense? Because you were talking, you painted quite a kind of stark picture about number of firms with fairly limited cash in the bank. How are you kind of weighing up the kind of the pros and cons for the sector going forward, the kind of the opportunities and the threats? Are you optimistic?
I'm a natural optimist, but I think that in terms of where some firms are financially, I think a lot of firms were fragile before even COVID came along. Firms have maintained their profitability by slashing the number of equity partners who share in the profits. And some of those people are very exposed now because they've got, borrowings to fund their capital investment in the firm. They've got personal borrowings. They've are facing having their profit distribution delayed for some months. So I think, there are some very real financial concerns there. And if you look back to 2008, some pretty big names went, like Heenan and Blakey and Dewey LaBeouf and, others this at Halliwell's, that the financial crisis accelerated their demise. So I don't want to be sort of over dramatic about this, but I think that some firms are going to be in a very difficult position. Having said that, for the ones that get beyond survival, who can embrace the fact that there will be greater home working, there'll be less demand for expensive real estate, there'll be a real surge in interest in creating true digital solutions to clients' needs. I think those firms will come out much stronger. And there is the old adage of never let a good recession go to waste. And looking back to 2008, the mistakes that we made were, one, getting rid of people too quickly in terms of layoffs, and then finding as soon as things came back to life, we were short of staff and short of skills. And secondly, the big mistake that all firms make, I'm afraid, is slashing the marketing budget, because that's often the first that the red pen goes through. But it's really at this time when you need to be engaging with clients, you need to be developing the brand, developing the opportunity. And so, marketing spend is really something that should be accelerated, not decelerated. But, firms will come out of this stronger, but I do fear that there will be some casualties in the process.
Mm-hmm. And on that point, in your previous role as kind of a leader of a firm, you mentioned that this is a time when marketing budgets can get under pressure. We know that a number of firms are furloughing members of staff. We've got a great contingent of marketing and BD professionals on the call this morning. So my question would be, Paul, what would be your advice, or what would you be looking for from those people in terms of supporting, driving that rebound of growth and kind of getting through the period we're in now?
I mean, going back to what I said before, this is really the opportunity to focus on the firm going to market as a whole. I think the failure of many professional services firms is still very much about the individual. And I think if the marketing professionals can catalyze around the brand of the firm and engaging with the clients and really providing that customer experience that, when I did the research for my recent book and spoke to the partners who'd been in the firms that had failed, every one of them said the same thing, was that they found it very difficult to get good legal advice, which is a pretty damning indictment of the profession, really. And I think if you can really accelerate that experience that clients feel, in my book, I interviewed a leading in-house lawyer who said, I know you're all smart people, But as a minimum, it would be nice if you return my phone calls and you return my emails. Treat me as a customer. Don't treat me as a client who's doing you a favour. And if we can get the marketing professionals to really focus on the customer experience, look at how they buy services in their personal life and how you bring that to bear in terms of an experience with a law firm professional service. It's getting that stickiness with clients, and that's more important than ever. And cutting the marketing spend is not the way that you achieve that.
Mm. And Nigel, picking up on that, how have you asked your team to kind of refocus their efforts at this time? Nigel, you're on mute.
Schoolboy error. Thank you, Alastair, for pointing that out. I think Paul's made some very good points there. Is we are very much thinking about our clients and the client and investing more at this moment in our client relationships and staying as close to our clients as we possibly can. And when we've had a couple of instances where really seriously large organizations have come to us and sort of said, some of their advisors, some of their consultants have furloughed entire teams, including their client relationship managers. I think that's a very sort of short-term view to take. I think if you stick with people through a crisis, it's a really great time to build a relationship. I'm not trying to trade off of what is an awful situation, but if you really do show your clients now that you're there and you're with them and you're keeping your teams together to be able to service their needs, I think you're going to learn a lot more about who they are, what they need, and you'll come, and the relationship will come out of this stronger. So we're really thinking very hard about not just our, primarily our top client relationships, but we're thinking very hard about who those clients are and what we can do for them right now.
Mm. And are you finding that they're receptive to those conversations right now, or is there a resistance to say, look, don't, it's just too much for us at the moment?
No. I think you have to work out where they are in the cycle. We're all thinking at the moment about, is this going down? Are we leveling out? Are we coming back? So you need to understand your client cycle, and you need to not be sort of bashing on the door if they're hitting a point, like Paul sort of says, in terms of cash situations, if they're ahead of crisis. But that doesn't mean that you go away and you don't talk to them for 2 months. I think they're very open to conversations. They're very open to sessions like this. We're doing, like you're doing with your clients here. We're doing the same sort of thing with our clients, getting their teams together. It's amazing how, if they're separated and they're fractured, how you can help them glue their teams back together just by getting them talking about interesting subjects. So it's a real mistake if you sort of think they're sitting there, they're not doing projects, therefore I'll just back off and give them a moment. Talk to them and find out whether they want a conversation, and I'm pretty sure that you'll find that they will.
Mm-hmm. And Keith, what does the next couple of months look like for you at Aon? Do you think, in terms of, we talked about kind of adapting to this new way of working, but pick up on what Nigel and Paul have said about continuing to engage with clients, keeping conversations going. What does that look like in your context?
Yeah, so I think we are pretty well equipped on the technological front. We're able to adapt to this perhaps better than other industries, so we're able to stay in business and do what our clients need. So I see the focus in 2 ways. In the short term, obviously being there, what everybody has said, just really good client service. Clients who are going through actual renewals of their insurance programs, clearly some challenges, which we've been able to address through technology, through WebEx meetings, get those jobs done, make sure that everything that needs to be done otherwise does get done. So I think that short-term focus is clearly very important. But for us, and I think for obviously our clients and their clients, it's looking towards the next two phases, which is the emerging from this into some form of normality, getting back to what normality might look like. I'm not giving any timescales there, and then what the future looks like in the long term. So I think we're getting a lot of inquiries in that future phase around, we've got to take another look at cybersecurity. We've got to take a look at business continuity management, not a surprise. So we are getting inquiries, but some of the work I was doing, which was looking towards creative innovation, has, to be honest, been put to one side, which I'm sure is everybody's experience, as our clients focus on what they need to do for their clients. What I would say, just to sort of wrap that up, if you like, I think what we have to be cognizant of, and what I would advise others to on a risk management front, is think about reputation. What are your stakeholders going to think about you a year from now? And that's employees, its clients, its insurers. Insurers are asking very intrusive questions around operational and financial risks. They're asking questions about the future, about technology. So be prepared for all of that. And in some ways, you have to take a view of what the future does look like. That's very, very difficult. But I think one word would be reputation. If you can make sure your reputation comes out the same or enhanced 12 months from now, then you've done a good job. And that's the rule for us as well.
Fantastic, Keith. And I think, Ben, when you were looking at the market, that kind of reputation piece did come up quite strongly. I know a number of the firms, that you were looking at have taken decisions perhaps not to accept government money, thinking about their wider reputation. Keith makes a good point there, doesn't he?
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think, particularly the big accountancy firms, their reputation is under scrutiny anyway because of concerns around the audit. So I think people have learned from 2008. And it's their reputation with the sort of general public, but also with their employees as well. So, I think it's a real test of leadership, actually. How do you balance, managing the cost base, but also being clear and transparent with your staff, motivating them when they're
now exiting.
So, it's a real test of leadership, I would say.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic. And we're coming towards the end of our conversation this morning. So maybe, Ben, just to kind of throw the final thought over to you as well. We've heard from our panel as well as from your research that actually there is quite some strong opportunities, that may come, in the medium and long term. Final word from you around kind of what we should be looking at over the coming months. How do we kind of unlock the most from this opportunity?
I think, if I was sitting in marketing and BD, I think this is a real opportunity to be creative. Is how do you build those relationships with clients when it's more difficult to have those face-to-face meetings, it's more difficult to have seminars. And I think actually it's quite a good thing. It forces you to use webinars, to use videos, to use interactive tools. So I think there'll be a burst of creativity going forward. And I think that's the challenge.
Great, fantastic. Well, that's a great note on which to end, I think. Thank you very much to Ben. Also, thank you to Keith, Paul, and to Nigel. And thank you everyone for joining this morning. As I said, the next session on the 21st, next Tuesday, we'll be taking a much deeper dive into some of the economic impact on various sectors. I'll be alongside Milan Dalal, and we'll be thinking about what demand patterns in particular areas look like for the short and longer term. So hope you can join us then. Thanks very much.